In life, we all encounter difficult people, those who try to drag us into their drama, manipulate our emotions, or bring negativity into our world. But here's the thing, we have the power to stop them from affecting us. It's not about changing them, but about changing how we respond. The ability to control your reactions is one of the most powerful tools we have in life. We live in a world where it's easy to become emotionally reactive. Someone cuts us off in traffic, a friend says something hurtful, or a colleague undermines our efforts at work. Our natural instinct is often to react, whether it's through anger, frustration, or defensiveness. But this is where our true power lies, in our ability to choose how we respond. Our initial reactions are not always within our control. They may be driven by emotions, past experiences, or even subconscious beliefs. However, what we do next, the choice to act or to pause, is entirely up to us. Every situation offers us two paths: to react in a way that is instinctive and perhaps harmful, or to respond thoughtfully and with intention. The difference between these two choices is immense. One leads to unnecessary conflict and frustration, while the other leads to peace, clarity, and growth. When you control your reactions, you take back the power that others might try to steal from you. Think about it. When someone insults us, they are trying to provoke a reaction. They want us to feel anger, frustration, or hurt, because, in their mind, it gives them power over us. But when we choose not to react in the way they expect, we disarm them. We don't allow their words or actions to control our emotions. This is not about suppressing our feelings or pretending that things don't affect us. It's about consciously choosing how we will respond, despite what others do. The key to controlling our reactions is awareness. We need to become aware of our triggers, those things that make us feel angry, upset, or defensive. Once we identify them, we can prepare ourselves mentally and emotionally for situations where those triggers might arise. It's like learning to drive a car. At first, you are cautious, reacting to every movement on the road. But with time and practice, you learn to stay calm and in control, even in challenging situations. The same applies to our emotional reactions. We can train ourselves to remain calm and centered, even when faced with provocation or stress. One of the most important aspects of controlling our reactions is recognizing that we don't have to engage with everything that happens around us. Just because someone says something rude or makes a hurtful comment doesn't mean we have to react in kind. In fact, often, the best response is no response at all. When we choose not to react impulsively, we show strength and self-control. We demonstrate that we are not easily shaken by external circumstances. Another way to control our reactions is through practicing mindfulness. Mindfulness helps us stay present in the moment and aware of our thoughts and emotions. When we are mindful, we are less likely to react out of habit or emotion. Instead, we can pause and make a conscious decision about how we want to respond. In the heat of the moment, this might feel challenging, but the more we practice mindfulness, the more natural it becomes to pause, reflect, and then choose our actions rather than just reacting instinctively. By controlling our reactions, we also prevent ourselves from escalating a situation. In conflict, when one person reacts defensively or aggressively, it often causes the other person to do the same, creating a cycle of negative energy. However, when we remain calm and composed, we break that cycle. We can address the situation without escalating the tension, and sometimes, our calmness may even inspire the other person to do the same. In this way, controlling our reactions not only serves our own peace of mind, but can also influence the dynamics of the situation for the better. Moreover, when we control our reactions, we protect our own mental and emotional well-being. Reacting negatively to people or situations can leave us feeling drained, upset, and stressed. On the other hand, responding thoughtfully preserves our energy and allows us to remain in a positive, centered state. We are less likely to carry around resentment or frustration when we choose to respond with clarity and self-control. In the end, controlling our reactions is not just about avoiding conflict or staying calm. It is a fundamental practice of self-mastery. By learning to control how we respond to life's challenges, we regain the power over our own lives. It is not others who can make us feel a certain way. It is our own choices that define how we experience the world. This is true freedom, the ability to respond to life on our own terms, with wisdom and grace. Detachment is a powerful concept that is often misunderstood. Many people associate detachment with indifference or a lack of care. But in reality, detachment is about understanding what truly belongs to us and what doesn't. It's about not allowing external circumstances, particularly the behavior of others, to control our emotional state. When we practice detachment, we are able to separate ourselves from the actions and words of others and remain grounded in our own sense of peace and self-worth. One of the key aspects of detachment is recognizing that we cannot control others. No matter how much we try, we cannot change the way people think, feel, or behave. People act according to their own beliefs, experiences, and emotions. Sometimes, this means they will act in ways that are toxic or hurtful. They may criticize us, undermine our efforts, or try to provoke us. However, none of these things need to affect us unless we allow them to. By practicing detachment, we stop giving other people the power to disrupt our inner peace. This doesn't mean we stop caring about others or their well-being. On the contrary, detachment allows us to care in a healthier way. When we detach ourselves from the need to control how others behave or respond, we are free to engage with them without taking their actions personally. If someone treats us badly, we no longer feel compelled to retaliate, prove ourselves, or seek approval. We understand that their behavior is a reflection of them, not of us. This realization frees us from the burden of feeling responsible for other people's emotions or actions. Detachment also helps us manage expectations. Often, we become frustrated when others don't meet our expectations or fail to live up to our standards. But the truth is, we cannot force people to behave the way we want them to. Expectations are often the source of disappointment. When we practice detachment, we let go of the need for others to act in a certain way. Instead, we accept them as they are, without judgment or attachment to how we think they should behave. This doesn't mean we accept harmful behavior, but it means we no longer allow ourselves to be consumed by the desire to change it. One of the benefits of detachment is the freedom it gives us. When we are detached from other people's opinions or actions, we are free to focus on what we can control, our own thoughts, emotions, and actions. We no longer waste energy trying to control or fix things that are beyond our influence. Instead, we conserve our energy for what truly matters, such as our own growth and well-being. Detachment allows us to become more self-aware and intentional in how we respond to the world around us. Another important aspect of detachment is the ability to let go of attachments to material things or external outcomes. Often, we become too attached to certain outcomes or possessions, thinking they will bring us happiness or fulfillment. But true contentment doesn't come from external sources, it comes from within. By practicing detachment, we can let go of the need to control outcomes or accumulate things for the sake of our self-worth. We learn to find joy in the present moment without needing anything outside of ourselves to complete us. Detachment also fosters emotional resilience. Life is unpredictable, and we will face challenges, setbacks, and difficulties. When we are attached to certain outcomes or to the approval of others, we become more vulnerable to these challenges. However, when we practice detachment, we develop the ability to weather life's storms without losing our sense of self. We learn to accept things as they are, without becoming overly attached to any particular outcome. This allows us to remain calm and composed, even in the face of adversity. By practicing detachment, we also improve our relationships. When we are not attached to the way others behave or respond, we are able to engage with them in a more compassionate and understanding way. We no longer take things personally or react out of hurt or anger. Instead, we can respond with empathy and clarity, recognizing that everyone is on their own journey and dealing with their own struggles. This creates a healthier dynamic where we can love and support others without becoming entangled in their emotions or behavior. Detachment is a practice that requires time and effort, but it is incredibly liberating. It allows us to live more peacefully and with greater self-awareness. When we detach from the need to control or change others, we take back our power. We no longer allow the actions of others to dictate our emotional state. Instead, we focus on what we can control, our own reactions, thoughts, and feelings, and in doing so, We create a sense of peace that no one can take from us. Focusing on what we can control is one of the most important aspects of leading a peaceful and fulfilling life. In a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable, it's easy to get caught up in things beyond our influence. We worry about what others think of us, what's happening in the world around us, or how others behave. However, the truth is that we have limited control over the external world, and this realization is incredibly freeing. Instead of spending our time and energy on things we cannot change, we should focus on what is within our control, our thoughts, actions, and emotions. When we direct our energy toward the things we can control, we stop wasting precious resources on things that do not serve us. For example, we cannot control how people behave, but we can control how we react to them. Someone may be rude or dismissive, but their behavior is their responsibility, not ours. We can choose whether to engage with them, whether to let their words affect us, or whether to let it slide and maintain our inner peace. By focusing on our own responses, we empower ourselves to stay calm, centered, and unshaken. Similarly, we cannot control every outcome in life. We can plan, work hard, and put our best efforts into a project, but the results are not always in our hands. This can be a difficult pill to swallow, especially when we put everything into something, and it doesn't turn out the way we hoped. But when we focus on what we can control, the effort we put in, the quality of our work, and our attitude toward the process, we release the need to control the outcome. In doing so, we stop attaching our worth or happiness to something beyond our control. We learn to find satisfaction in the effort itself, regardless of the end result. The Stoic philosophy teaches that we should not be attached to external events because they are beyond our influence. Instead, we should focus on cultivating inner virtues such as wisdom, courage, and self-discipline. These are the things we can control, and by developing them, we build a solid foundation for a peaceful and meaningful life. If we make decisions based on our values and not on external approval, we find strength and clarity. We are no longer at the mercy of circumstances or the opinions of others. Focusing on what we can control also allows us to become more self-aware. When we turn our attention inward, we begin to understand our own thoughts, emotions, and reactions. We learn to identify the patterns in our behavior and become more mindful of how we respond to different situations. This awareness is key to making better decisions and living with intention. We realize that we don't need to react impulsively to every situation. Instead, we can pause, reflect, and choose how we want to respond. When we focus on what we can control, we also begin to accept the things we cannot change. We stop resisting reality and stop wishing things were different. This acceptance doesn't mean we give up or stop striving for improvement, but it means that we learn to find peace with the present moment. We recognize that certain things are out of our hands, and rather than fighting against them, we learn to adapt and move forward. This shift in mindset brings a sense of calm, as we stop wasting energy on things we cannot influence. Taking control of our thoughts and emotions is a key part of this practice. Our thoughts often determine how we feel and behave. If we focus on negative thoughts or dwell on things we can't change, we spiral into frustration or anxiety. But when we consciously choose to focus on positive, empowering thoughts, we shift our perspective. This doesn't mean ignoring the challenges we face, but it means choosing to focus on solutions, growth, and acceptance. By doing so, we take responsibility for our emotional state and create a positive internal environment. Additionally, focusing on what we can control helps us build resilience. Life is filled with ups and downs, and challenges are inevitable. However, when we focus on what we can control, our responses, our mindset, and our actions, we become more adaptable. We can face adversity with strength and patience because we are not overwhelmed by external circumstances. Instead of feeling helpless in the face of challenges, we take proactive steps to handle them in the best way we know how. By focusing on what we can control, we also stop waiting for external validation. We stop relying on others to approve of our choices or confirm our worth. Instead, we find strength in ourselves. Our value is no longer tied to the opinions or judgments of others. We know that we are enough, regardless of what anyone else thinks or says. This inner confidence allows us to move through life with a sense of purpose and clarity. In the end, focusing on what we can control is about taking responsibility for our own lives. It is about recognizing that we have the power to shape our experiences through the way we think, feel, and act. By redirecting our energy toward what we can influence and letting go of what we cannot, we create a life of peace, strength, and fulfillment. Resilience is the ability to withstand, recover from, or grow in the face of adversity. Life is filled with challenges, and we are all bound to face difficulties, whether personal struggles, setbacks in our careers, or unexpected crises. Resilience doesn't mean that we are unaffected by hardship, but it means that we have the inner strength to rise above it. We have the capacity to not only survive, but to grow through difficult experiences. The Stoics taught that adversity is not something to fear but something to embrace, as it offers opportunities for growth and self-discovery. The key to resilience is not avoiding hardship, but developing the ability to cope with it when it inevitably comes our way. Life does not always unfold the way we expect or hope, and sometimes we will face situations that test us to our limits. However, when we build resilience, we develop the ability to handle these situations with a sense of calm, clarity, and control. Resilient people don't allow external circumstances to dictate their emotional state. They choose how to respond to those circumstances. They know that while they cannot control what happens, they can control their reactions. Resilience begins with a shift in mindset. Instead of viewing challenges as obstacles or problems, we can choose to see them as opportunities for growth. When we encounter a difficult situation, we have the chance to learn something new about ourselves. Perhaps we discover hidden strengths, untapped resources, or new perspectives that help us move forward. This mindset change transforms adversity into a tool for self-improvement. It allows us to view challenges as part of the process of becoming stronger, wiser, and more capable. The Stoics believed that hardship is a natural part of life. They understood that suffering and difficulty are inevitable, but they also believed that these experiences offer the potential for growth. For example, when faced with loss, disappointment, or failure, a resilient person does not dwell in self-pity or despair. Instead, they ask themselves, what can I learn from this? How can I use this experience to become better? By reframing adversity in this way, we take away its power to break us. We gain strength from it instead. Resilience also requires emotional regulation. It's easy to react impulsively when faced with difficulty, whether through anger, fear, frustration, or sadness. These emotions are natural and human, but they can often cloud our judgment and hinder our ability to move forward. Resilient people understand that while emotions are important, they should not be the driving force behind our actions. Instead, we must learn to recognize and manage our emotions, not letting them dictate how we respond. This doesn't mean suppressing or ignoring our feelings, but rather acknowledging them and choosing a thoughtful response instead of reacting impulsively. Building emotional resilience involves creating space between stimulus and response. When faced with a difficult situation, rather than immediately reacting, we pause and reflect. This pause gives us the opportunity to assess the situation, understand our emotions, and decide how we want to respond. It allows us to stay grounded and focused, even in the midst of chaos. By practicing this mindful approach to adversity, we become more capable of handling whatever challenges come our way. Another important aspect of resilience is the ability to accept that we cannot control everything. No matter how much we plan, prepare, or strive for perfection, there will always be elements of life that are beyond our control. Resilient people don't waste energy fighting against what they cannot change. Instead, they focus on what they can influence, their thoughts, actions, and attitudes. By letting go of the need to control every outcome, we free ourselves from frustration and anxiety. This acceptance allows us to navigate challenges with a sense of peace and grace. Resilience is also about adaptability. Life is constantly changing, and the ability to adapt to new circumstances is essential for overcoming obstacles. When faced with unexpected events, resilient people don't cling to the past or resist change. Instead, they look for ways to adjust, adapt, and move forward. They embrace change as an opportunity to learn, grow, and evolve. This adaptability gives them the flexibility to handle whatever life throws their way, without becoming overwhelmed or defeated. A resilient mindset also involves perseverance. Life's challenges are rarely quick fixes. They often require time, effort, and persistence. Resilient people don't give up after a setback or a failure. They keep going even when the road is tough. They understand that success is not defined by the absence of obstacles, but by the ability to keep moving forward despite them. This perseverance is what allows us to achieve our goals and overcome the hardest of challenges. It is the ability to keep going, no matter how many times we fall. In essence, Resilience is a practice. It is something we develop over time through experiences, reflection, and conscious effort. It doesn't come naturally to everyone, but it can be cultivated through small, consistent actions. Each time we face a challenge and rise above it, we strengthen our resilience. Each time we adapt to a new situation, we become more capable of handling whatever comes next. Resilience is not about avoiding pain or difficulty. It is about developing the strength and mindset to endure, grow, and thrive despite them. When we are faced with toxic people, our first instinct might be to fight back or seek revenge, to prove ourselves or to defend our honor. However, engaging in this type of conflict only gives away our energy and peace of mind. The Stoics teach us that seeking revenge or trying to retaliate against someone who harms us only prolongs our suffering. Instead of engaging in this negative cycle, they advise us to practice silence, composure, and wisdom. By doing so, we not only protect ourselves but also disarm toxic people, rendering their attempts at provocation powerless. First and foremost, we must understand that toxic people often act out of their own insecurities, frustrations, or pain. Their behavior may be rooted in their own unresolved issues, and they may lash out at others as a way of coping. When we recognize this, we can start to see their actions for what they truly are, a reflection of their own internal struggles, not a reflection of who we are. This understanding shifts the focus away from ourselves and toward compassion and detachment. We stop taking their behavior personally, because we realize that their actions have nothing to do with our worth or value. The next step is to practice silence in the face of provocation. Often toxic people thrive on drama and conflict. They want us to engage with them, to argue or defend ourselves. When we respond to their provocations, we give them exactly what they want: attention, validation, and a chance to keep the conflict going. However, when we choose to remain silent, we take away their power. Silence is not a passive response. It is a powerful way of showing that we will not be drawn into their negative energy. It communicates that we are in control of our emotions and reactions, and that their behavior will not dictate our actions. Composure is another essential aspect of disarming toxic people. Remaining composed, no matter how much they try to provoke us, sends a strong message we are unaffected by their attempts to disturb our peace. Composure is not about suppressing our emotions or pretending to be unaffected. It is about choosing to respond in a calm, measured way, even when we feel triggered. When we maintain our composure, we prevent ourselves from falling into the trap of reacting impulsively or emotionally. We maintain control over ourselves, and in doing so, we protect our emotional well-being. Wisdom plays a crucial role in disarming toxic people as well. The Stoics teach us to act with virtue, and part of this is recognizing when it is better to walk away from a situation rather than escalate it. Sometimes, the wisest response is not to engage at all. Toxic people often want to argue, manipulate, or cause drama, but we don't have to participate. We can simply remove ourselves from the situation and choose peace over conflict. By doing this, we not only protect ourselves but also avoid contributing to the negative energy that toxic people are trying to create. It's also important to set boundaries with toxic people. While silence and composure are powerful tools, they are not the only strategies we need to use. Setting clear, firm boundaries is essential in protecting ourselves from being dragged into toxic behavior. Boundaries allow us to define what is acceptable behavior and what is not. When we set boundaries, we are telling toxic people that their behavior will not be tolerated. We don't need to engage in a confrontation to set these boundaries. A simple, calm statement can make it clear that we will not tolerate disrespect, manipulation, or negativity. One of the most freeing aspects of disarming toxic people is realizing that we don't need to seek revenge or justice. Toxic people often act in ways that are unfair or hurtful, and it's easy to feel as though we need to get back at them or make them pay for their actions. However, the Stoics remind us that seeking revenge only poisons our minds and emotions. It takes up our energy and attention, keeping us stuck in the negative cycle of resentment. Instead of focusing on what others have done to us, we can focus on how we respond. We can choose forgiveness, not because the other person deserves it, but because we deserve peace. By choosing to disarm toxic people through silence, composure, and wisdom, we also take back our power. When we stop reacting to their negativity, we stop giving them control over our emotions. We are no longer at the mercy of their behavior. We become the masters of our own reactions, and this is where true freedom lies. In the end, the best way to deal with toxic people is not to engage in a battle, but to rise above it. By practicing Stoic principles, we protect our inner peace, preserve our energy, and disarm those who would seek to disturb us. The ability to guard our peace is one of the most important skills we can develop in life. In a world filled with distractions, chaos, and constant external pressures, it's easy to let others or situations steal our inner calm. But true peace comes from within, and it is something that we can control, regardless of what happens around us. When we guard our peace, we protect ourselves from the stress, negativity, and emotional turbulence that can come from external sources. This ability allows us to remain centered and grounded, even in the most difficult circumstances. To guard our peace, we must first recognize that it is our responsibility. No one else can protect our peace for us. It is something we must consciously protect and cultivate. It requires setting boundaries, both with ourselves and with others, to ensure that we do not allow negative influences to disturb our sense of calm. One of the most effective ways to guard our peace is to stop letting other people's actions or opinions control how we feel. We often give away our peace when we allow the behavior of others to affect us. Someone's rude comment, a harsh criticism, or a toxic interaction can easily trigger negative emotions, but it is up to us whether we let it bother us. When we stop reacting emotionally to the words and actions of others, we begin to reclaim our peace. This doesn't mean that we should ignore or suppress our feelings. It simply means that we choose not to let external circumstances dictate how we feel or react. When we face difficult situations, we have the power to decide how we will respond. Will we allow ourselves to be consumed by anger or frustration, or will we choose to remain calm and composed? Guarding our peace means being intentional about how we respond to the world around us. It means taking a step back, assessing the situation, and choosing a response that preserves our inner calm, rather than giving in to emotional reactivity. Another way to guard our peace is through detachment. Detachment is the practice of separating ourselves from things that we cannot control. We cannot control the actions of others, the circumstances of life, or the outcomes of certain situations. But we can control how much weight we give to these external factors. When we become too attached to things outside of our control, whether it's the approval of others, the outcomes of our efforts, or the behavior of those around us, we give away our peace. Detachment allows us to let go of these attachments and find peace in the present moment, free from the need for external validation or control. Guarding our peace also involves limiting our exposure to negativity. This could mean distancing ourselves from toxic people, avoiding the news if it overwhelms us, or choosing to limit our time in environments that drain our energy. We are often influenced by the people we surround ourselves with and the media we consume. If we are constantly exposed to negativity, it can be difficult to maintain our sense of peace. By making conscious choices about who and what we allow into our lives, we can protect our mental and emotional space. This doesn't mean that we should isolate ourselves from the world or avoid all challenges, but it does mean being mindful of what we allow to enter our minds and hearts. Another essential aspect of guarding our peace is self-care. Taking time to care for ourselves, physically, mentally, and emotionally, helps us build the resilience needed to stay grounded in the face of life's challenges. Regular self-care practices such as meditation, exercise, journaling, or simply taking time to relax and recharge help replenish our energy and fortify our sense of peace. When we neglect self-care, we become more susceptible to stress and negativity. But when we prioritize our well-being, we are better able to cope with whatever comes our way without losing our inner calm. To guard our peace, we must also cultivate mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of staying present in the moment and being aware of our thoughts, feelings, and reactions. It helps us observe our emotions without becoming overwhelmed by them. When we are mindful, we can catch negative thought patterns before they take over, and we can choose a more peaceful response. Mindfulness allows us to detach from the past or future and focus on the present moment, where peace resides. By practicing mindfulness regularly, we train our minds to stay centered and calm, regardless of what is happening around us. Finally, guarding our peace requires a deep sense of self-awareness and acceptance. We must learn to accept that life will never be free of challenges, conflict, or disappointment. But we can choose to approach these challenges with a peaceful mind. When we accept the reality of life, both its joys and its difficulties, we stop fighting against what is and instead, we embrace it. This acceptance allows us to move through life with greater ease and tranquility. We stop resisting the flow of life and start moving with it, understanding that peace is not the absence of problems, but the ability to remain calm in the face of them. Guarding our peace is not a passive process, it is an active choice that we make every day. It requires awareness, intention, and discipline. But by practicing these principles, we can protect our inner calm and create a life that is not ruled by external circumstances. When we guard our peace, we reclaim our power, and we become less vulnerable to the chaos of the world around us.